How you feeling? You doing all right?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm
doing
feeling
good.
dope.
Yeah, you should. You should. You got to be Bruce Leroy versus show now.
Oh,
I'm the
nice.
king of t-shirts right about now. Do you have your wine? Cheers.
How'd you know? Cheers.
Mhm. Well, everyone, thank you for joining and welcome to another episode of Dope Chats with Stretch, that be moi. Tonight, I am happy to have a good friend of mine, and she is just super talented, super just everything. Whenever I need something, I just call her. She makes it happen. All right, none other than Arika L. She is a success coach and author of.
Oh, wait.
Hold up your book.
I'm rusty.
There it is. Author of the Millennials Playbook to Adulting. It's a great read for individuals out there who are millennials, who are now, I guess we can say, we're putting the Gen Zers, are they? Is that what they're called?
So Gen Z is about early 20s.
Right.
So, your 22, 23-year-olds. Millennials are between 24 to 39. So the oldest millennial will be 39 this year. So everyone that's a millennial, just because you're 20 doesn't mean you're a millennial, which is a misconception.
I don't know the brackets of the age groups, because everybody's a millennial to me. I'm just like, oh, you damn millennials,
And now that's why I'm here to set you right, so you get your ages, so your brackets right. So millennials are almost 40.
Okay, all right. So they're on
some millennials, not all of them. Some of them.
The older millennials.
Yes, exactly.
They're on the cusp. So let's talk about I guess the difference between the millennials and the Gen Xers, the Gen Zers, the baby boomers, because with your book, you more or less try to I'll let you take the platform. Adulting. What is the premise of the book itself?
So the premise of the book, it was really because I have done a lot of just coaching. I've done a lot of hiring. I've done a lot of managing, and definitely felt as though the millennial generation was the one that was sort of lacking some of those, I think just kind of things that that seem to come naturally to other generations. And I think a lot of that is actually driven by technology. So one of the things about millennials is that most of them all grew up, with technology, with the internet. Now, they didn't grow up the way Gen Z does, where they literally have a computer. They come off the womb with the computer in their hand, right? Millennials, but they never really knew the time of going to the, library and researching and asking questions and things like that. They've had a mostly heads down sort of, just a timeline as far as how they grew up. And as a result of that, I think that there's so many things that they sort of missed out on when they didn't know the answer to things. Instead of asking their mom, dad, teacher, mentor, they Googled it, right?
Right.
And so it feels as though sometimes they're just, certain little things that just skipped over their generation, that you're like, like, what do you mean you don't know how to, send an email or, has a proper salutation and doesn't use, emojis, things like that for work. And so I wrote the book to really just give some very straightforward advice to millennials on how to handle everything related to adulting. So that covers how to get a job, how to keep a job. I feel as though there's a lot out there about how to get a job, but not a lot out there about how you keep that job after you get it, showing up on time, asking for feedback, taking on new projects, things like that. Also, I talk about how to network. There's a chapter that I call, No New Friends is just a rap song by Drake. You really want to make sure you're always expanding your network, that you are meeting new people, especially professionally. And then I talk about things such as how to create your own board of directors, which is what I really call your mentorship base. So it shouldn't just be one person that you have a mentor. You want to have a true board around you that you can go to for different things, bounce different ideas off on. Mm-hmm. And then I talk about mental health. I think millennials are one of the first generations that have really been I think, much more transparent about the importance of mental health. And I know May is Mental Health Month.
Right.
So that's an important chapter here, because I do think that, you know, when you look at statistics, they say millennials deal with a lot. I don't actually know if they deal with more mental health issues than other generations, or if they're just more open to saying, you know, I have anxiety, I'm depressed, things like that. You know, so a lot of that was sort of more so behind closed doors in other generations. And then I talk about finances, you know, how to make sure that you don't spend all your money and go broke in your 20s and 30s, and how you can still, you know, survive. So really the point of the book is just very straightforward, but very actionable things. I mean, I literally have lots of like, these are the 3 things that you need to do right now. These are the, you know, I want it to be something that you could close the book and immediately go and put, you know, parts of it into action. And so, so that was the point of, you know, the point of the book. I've gotten great feedback that it's an easy read. It's kind of, I have a lot of jokes, a lot of quotes. Everyone from Nicki Minaj to Benjamin Franklin is quoted in the book. So, and it's not just for millennials. So the millennials is who I market it to, but it's really for anybody that just kind of needs some, you know, help with things that are somewhat common sense.
And it's funny that, I mean, that you mentioned that, in the sense that, like, when I read the book, because like at my job, I work with a lot of millennials, and I got the book for 2 of the young ladies that I work with and passed it on to them when your book first came out. And I was like, oh man, I have to read this, because I need to know how to deal with some of the millennials, because to me, I'm like, like, again, I don't want to be like that crotchety old man, like how baby boomers are with
yeah.
But it's like, I can't believe it. Like, they don't even know how to use the fax machine. It's like, what's the fax machine? I'm like, what?
I mean, who's really faxing anything though?
Sometimes, I mean, you know, we got important documents in the government. You know what I'm saying? Important documents. But again, just from the standpoint of just the personality traits and things of that nature, you know, learning how to speak to them in the sense that where they don't think like you're trying to berate them or cut down on them.
Right.
You're like, oh God, I got to do all this. But it's very helpful in the sense of that nature. So kudos to you. And like you said, it is a very easy read. So you can pick that book up and knock it out and take your notes and apply those immediately to get through the day. Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the situation that we're in right now. Like, how do you think some of the Gen Xers and wait a minute, Gen Xers? That's me. The Gen Zers and the Millennials are coping with the restraints of being restricted right now?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when you sit back and think about it. So, in some ways, I actually think Gen Z is probably doing the best because, frankly, you know, they just communicate a lot on social media. So they're doing their TikToks and, like, you know, and just kind of still living. Right, exactly. I mean, you know, they're in the house board, or however it goes. But you know, they frankly, in terms of that social connection, they are much more accustomed to getting that social connection through technology, through social media. So I think from a socialization standpoint, they're probably doing somewhat of the, you know, the best. Most of them are either, you know, in college or right out of college. So they're definitely sort of dealing with the, you know, what the hell do I do right now? Can I get an internship if there's a pandemic? Can I get you know, how do I apply for jobs? Things like that. I think millennials are definitely sort of having probably a tougher time. A lot of millennials that I've been talking to, you know, I actually talked to someone just yesterday who reached out for some advice. You know, they're sort of in that place in their career where, you know, they're starting to take on leadership role. You hear my dog?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that?
I know. Yeah, I told her, I gave her a talking to before I started. But they're starting to take on some leadership roles, and you know, they might be up for a promotion or they're working on some major project or something like that. And so a lot of them are worried, especially those who have never worked from home before. How do I continue to, stay visible? How do I make sure that I don't sort of fall off the radar screen, or my career path doesn't sort of get, hijacked by what's going on?
Right.
And then also, of course, I think they're definitely struggling too with the socialization piece as well. A lot of millennials, you have a lot of that population, and we know more millennials are single than sort of any other generation. So a lot of them live alone. I think dealing with the pandemic alone versus dealing it with while you're with other people is very different. There's pros and cons to both.
Right.
So I think it is interesting when you look at it by generation, that there are some differences. But most of the ones that I'm hearing from, the thing that they're most worried about is, how do I stay visible? How do I make sure that my career doesn't crash because, my company is sort of, like, I don't talk to my boss anymore. I don't see my boss. I'm trying to manage employees, from a distance remotely. I've never done that before. Those are the types of things that I think millennials especially are having a harder time with.
That's what's up. Gotta say what's up to everybody who's in the room right about now. So many people. I don't want to shout out everybody, but thank you all for joining. You're listening and watching rather Dope Chats with Stretch. And my guest tonight is Arika L, a success coach, motivational speaker, and an author. And we're talking about millennials in the workplace. So let's talk on. I had a good question for you. So now that we know that some of these Gen Zers and maybe the latter part of the millennials have graduated from college or grad school, what is some of the advice that you would give to them as they start pursuing and matriculating into the workforce?
So the number one advice I'm giving to everyone right now, especially while we're in this sort of virtual environment, is get your LinkedIn game together. I actually, I got my nephew, who is a senior in college. He's 22. His homework for me last week was, by Friday, I want you to have a LinkedIn profile up. And, it's not just for old people. It's not just a place where, people just go to, post articles. There's a lot of great networking that goes on there. There's a lot of education that goes on there. LinkedIn actually has a phenomenal educational platform. So it's a great place to hone some of your skills, everything from how to use Excel to public speaking to problem solving, executive presence. They have lots of classes. And then again, you can just connect with people. And I think right now, because, even though hopefully everyone is still working, there are people obviously who are not working, who've lost their jobs, but our calendars are somewhat more open than they used to be. So I'm someone that used to travel a lot for work. So even though I've always actually worked remotely for the past 5 years, so that's not a big deal to me. But I'm not having to go to the airplane, do all those things, be gone for 3-4 days. So, in some ways I have more time on my hands because that's been cut out. Right. So everybody that's been reaching out to me, I've been responding to on LinkedIn. And I've had quite a few people who hit me up to say, can I look at their resume? Could they connect with me? Can they do a short conversation with me? So that's what I've been telling people right now. Don't think that you can't still network. You can't still meet new people. People are more open to it right now, again, because everyone is sort of in this new normal. So it's a great time to really step it up. And it doesn't matter what field you're in. People think sometimes LinkedIn, I'm a graphic designer, so I don't need to be on LinkedIn. That's not true. Go on, post some of your graphic designs. There's there's companies that need graphic design, that need, you would be surprised. So that's my number one thing. I think what I suggest I'm challenging people to do is pick 20 people that you want to connect with, 10 that are somewhat reachable that you want to connect with, and 10 that are sort of, out of your, range, and reach out to all 20. It might be on LinkedIn, it might be through another platform, it might be a connection through someone but make that list and focus on trying to see how many people that you can add to, just again, your network right now, because that's the way people get jobs. That's the way people, just expand and grow. It's a lot of it is through who you know. It's still that old school network of who you know.
And I think one of the things that I've noticed, like with my experiences through LinkedIn too, is like you have to treat it different from Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Because if you reach out to these individuals who are somewhat aligned with your career choices that you're trying to do, you still have to make sure that you're present in the sense of sending them a message or an email, just introducing yourself to make sure that you open up that line of communication. Because I mean, you know, it is a professional site in the sense of you're looking for employment. So make sure that you're readily available for when people reach out to you, and check your LinkedIn account.
Get the app. I have the app on my phone, and it may not, be as much fun as some of your other apps, but the engagement level that's happening on LinkedIn is at an all-time high in terms of people posting content, sharing content. You can now go live on LinkedIn. And there's all there's these new capabilities that are happening. So I think it's honestly a great resource to use right now. And one quick story I'll tell you is last year, there was a young man, he was graduating from Morehouse, and he posted on LinkedIn that he was looking for a job. He was graduating, he was looking for a job in digital marketing, really wanted to work in the sports field, and had a very professional picture. He posted his resume. So he's like 21, 22 years old. And, just said, if anyone sees this, that and they would be willing to connect me to someone or repost, I'd appreciate it. So someone in my network had posted it. I was just so impressed by how proactive he was being at his age. I reposted it. I had 3 people that I knew who worked in the sports field, one person at the NFL, one person at the NFL Players Association, another person who's a sports attorney. So I connected this guy, just with these 3 people, just to see what happened. So you just never, ever know. And he ultimately posted an update that he did end up getting a job through LinkedIn. I think he ended up saying he got 1.6 million shares just from his post. Yeah. So don't underestimate the power of going viral on a platform like LinkedIn. Especially right now, where you're not going to conferences, you're not going to those types of networking events. You may not be meeting people for lunch, in doing those types of things. Use what you can to your advantage.
Absolutely.
I don't work for LinkedIn. This is not an ad.
Yeah, right. No, but it's in essence, it's reality, because you have to utilize the resources that are given to you in order, because to pretty much put yourself out there. Long gone are those days where you can just sit and go to an office. For me, like in radio, that's how I pretty much got started in radio. I went and sat at the radio station until I saw the boss come in, resume, audio tape in hand, and handed it to him like, here it is. Like I would do that constantly.
Really? But that level of just being proactive and also being creative, thinking outside the box. I mean, I think that's what you have to do. And I do think that's where some of the people criticize millennials, is that I do believe there is a segment of them that think that someone's going to be like, hey, I just wanted to come offer you this opportunity.
It reminds me of this old joke that Robin Harris used to say, like, knock, knock, who is it? Job. Oh, I ain't here. I don't want it. You know what I'm saying? Like, jobs just ain't going to come knocking on the door.
Right. But there is, I mean, I do come across people that I talk to and that are in the younger generations that I really think that they're like, I went to college, and I'm like, okay, like, how competitive it is out here. Like, you got to be doing things that will set you apart, and you have to be proactive, and you can't be afraid to reach out to people, because if you're not doing it, I guarantee someone else is. And so, you don't want to, you'll be passed, you'll be left behind.
And I think another thing that a lot of the young cats need to realize too is that don't be afraid of failure, because to me, there's no such thing as failure. There's the lack of trying, because if you don't try.
I believe failure is feedback on just how you need to do it differently next time. And also, I believe you just fail forward. I mean, failure is sometimes the only way that you're going to get to the next step. So you cannot be afraid to fail. Again, failure is truly feedback on your way to success.
Right.
That it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
And I think too, as a Gen Xer, Yeah, Gens.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I'll be getting them all confused. We still go through that process too, because now we're at that point in our careers where we've already had 20 plus years or so, you know, and invested in your career. Some people are moving up to supervisory management positions and things of that nature. And then when you're, you know, looking to pursue or find a different job, and this is one of the questions I want to get to, is the art of interviewing. Interviewing has definitely changed, I think, over the years. When you go in for jobs now, and I've realized this, you get a lot of open-ended questions, you know,
Yeah.
scenarios, or like, what would you do, or how would you do this, or can you think back to a time when I'm like, yo, I don't remember, you know, back in, say, 2001, what happened then. So it's like, you got to be ready and on your feet. So how can people be prepared for interview questions such as that?
So number one, and this I think applies even if you're not interviewing, but you should always know what your sort of elevator pitch is about yourself.
Right.
So if I were to say to you, Stretch, tell me about yourself. That is sometimes a question that people get so tongue tied, you know, around. Like,
I like the fish. I like Dunkin' Donuts. What about you?
And so in interviews, what tends to happen when someone says, you know, oh, you know, tell me a little bit about, you know, what brought you here, how about your career. What do people do? They literally just read their resume off that the person has in front of them, right? So what I recommend is that a couple things. So number one, you need to be able to tell some things about yourself that someone's not going to find in your resume. So the way I would take that question on, I would say, well, I'm not going to, you know, bore you with all of the details of my, you know, work history and my education. Let me tell you a little bit about my leadership style, or let me tell you a little bit about why I want to pursue this opportunity or something like that. Because, you know, if you just start saying, well, you know, I went to college at, you know, so-and-so, LSU, which is where I went, and then I did this, I worked here. I mean, all of that is right in front of them. So, you know, that is not really valuable information. The other thing I also recommend in interviews is that before you go into the interview, you have really two or three things that you want to make sure that you get across. And so if you know what those two or three things are before the interview, whenever you're asked a question, you will figure out a way to sort of work them in, you know? Right. So that's an important component. So that way you leave making sure you deliver the things that you wanted to, you know, give to them, not just answer their questions.
Right.
And then also make sure that, you know, you are ready for the interview. I mean, the other thing that's very different now is that there is no excuse not to know about what's going on with the company, or not to have researched the person that you're interviewing with, all of those different things. Like if you go and you find out that you guys the person you knew who you're interviewing with, and they went to your you know, high school or college or things like that. I mean, there are ways, most people can find all that out by now. And so you should be doing your research. You should know, you know, do Google News alerts of the company, see if anything happened that has been significant, you know, show that you've done your homework. And then also make sure that you know how to make the case for why you want to work there. I think what'll be interesting, especially as we move into what's likely another recession, is that you're going to have lots of people applying for lots of jobs, some of which they will want to work at, some of which they don't want to work at, right? So they just want a job.
They just want a
and
job,
so, yeah. So if you actually want the job, you really need to make sure you can articulate, you know, what value you will be bringing to that position. One of my first leadership jobs I ever was hired for. Number one, I had a little bit of imposter, I should say, syndrome at the time, but I applied for the job. It was a director job. I was in my mid-20s. I probably was not qualified for it, but I applied, and I was shocked when they called me in for an interview. And so the job was to actually open up the DC office for this company. They had no presence in DC. They wanted to do some federal lobbying, things like that. So when I went to the interview, I actually brought my 90-day plan for what I wanted to do those first 90 days and what would be the things I would focus on, the achievements. I had it laid out on a piece of paper. I handed it over. And that got me the job because they could see that I had put some thought into the position, that I was taking it seriously, that I was ready for that level of responsibility. So you should think about things like that, you know? And then there's just the basic stuff. I mean, come on time, make sure if you bring a copy of your resume, it's not all, you know, crumpled up, dress the part, you know, be comfortable, practice, like get somebody to practice with, don't wing it. You know, especially if you haven't done a lot of interviewing, make sure that you know how to look people in the eye and answer questions and those types of things. So, you know, but you're right. It's very different than the way it used to be years ago.
Right. And then now even with the situation that we're going through right now with the pandemic, a lot of interviews are now being done via Zoom or via, you know, telephonically. So you don't have that person in front of you to look at. And so you still have to concentrate and make sure that you answer the questions and not be distracted if you're in your home.
Yep, you're right. It's funny because someone reached out to me recently who is not a millennial. He's actually in his, he's 50. And he was interviewing and he was having to do an interview via Zoom because, you know, again, during the pandemic. And so, you know, he just wanted some advice on how to handle that sort of different dynamic of interviewing in this new sort of, you know, environment. And so, you know, I just gave him some of the tips. I do a lot of stuff on video. So I'm fairly comfortable with it, but you know, it's different. It's definitely different than when you are having that face-to-face, you know, ability to see and look someone in the eye. But you know, it's better than no interviews at all. So it's better than someone saying, we can't interview you, so we can't hire you for the next 3-4 months.
So now we're at a point where you go to your workplace where it's about 4 different generations in one workplace now. What advice or would you give to the millennials and the Gen Zers who are coming into the workplace that have already established, with some baby boomers who are still working? Of course, you have the Gen Xers who are still there. So you have 4 generations in one workplace. What is some of the advice that you would give these new cats that are coming into the workforce on how to deal with us more mature folks?
Seasoned. So number one, I give this advice across the generations. We've got to all collaborate together. So if you're a leader, make sure that you have cross-generational teams. Don't put all your 20-somethings on one project and all your, you know, baby boomers on another. Mix it up. There's different things that, you know, all generations can bring to the project. But for the millennials specifically, or Gen Z, I would say seek out that knowledge. You know, sometimes I know it can be a bit frustrating because it seems like, you know, the old school way of doing things, or it's slower, it's not as efficient, and you know, it's just there's different sort of perspectives on the work ethic, things like that.
Right.
But definitely seek out that knowledge. And you know, there's nothing like someone who's really been around a long time. They just know a lot of stuff. Don't underestimate what someone might know. Especially if they've been in their position or been at the company or organization for a while. And then, I really believe in reciprocal mentoring. Mm-hmm. So I believe that just as there's things that millennials can learn or Gen Z can learn from baby boomers and Gen X, there's lots of things that baby boomers and Gen X can learn from millennials as well as Gen Z. So, you know, just share, collaborate, you know, figure out how things can be done differently and how things can be done the same. But I think it's just important for everyone to not assume the worst about each other. And right. I think that's what people assume, right? Because baby boomers feel like these younger generations are coming in. They want to push them out. They want to take their jobs. They don't want to work hard. They just want to come in and, be the boss on day one. And then the younger generations feel like, oh, well, how the hell am I ever going to, be able to get promoted if so-and-so is standing in my way and they won't resign or retire, I should say, and things like that. So, it's like they're already coming in with these, sort of generational assumptions that are making them clash, but put those away and really think about, again, how can we make the cross-generational workforce and team work, efficiently, work better together. And so I think I think companies that have all four generations are actually, they have an advantage, but I think, again, you have to know how to really manage it correctly.
Diva Londa says she's definitely dealing with that right now in education. I would assume so.
Yeah,
because I've talked to some of my friends who have kids, and they're, of course, they're homeschooling them, and the new ways that they're teaching kids how to do math, like the way that we were taught to do math, and so they're all like, I don't know what's going on, and it's crazy. So I guess, so you would have like that sort of gap between like the old school way versus the new school way. And very interesting dynamics, man. So we're here. It's Dope Chats. Of course, again, my guest is Arika L. success coach, author, motivational speaker, and also all around what's the word I'm looking for? Savant when it comes to MailChimp, because I had to call her to help me how to figure out how to do MailChimp.
We had to do a Zoom meeting, actually.
Yes, we did have to do a Zoom meeting, so no doubt. So what are some other hot topics or things that you want to just hit and talk to, especially for, I think we may have some parents that are watching right now whose kids or young adults have just graduated, and some of the things that they might be able to take and give them from some formative advice when it comes to their next steps in their careers or starting their careers.
One of the things that I find is, and I find this with my nephew a bit. He's, as I said earlier, he's 22. He's a senior in college, and patience. I think that we want, of course, our children, our family members, our nephews, nieces, we want them to be great. And we want them to be, not just ordinary, but extraordinary.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes, it does not always feel like that younger generation has the same sense of urgency that other generations have. Like I think about myself, like I could not wait to, get a job so I get my own money. Like that was, my number one. Like I want my own money so I can do whatever I want with it. And it's interesting because these younger generations, they're sort of fine. I mean, that's why a lot of them are still living at home. There's a lot of research out there saying that, for the first time there, you have like teenagers waiting to get their licenses. Like they don't want the independence of driving and all of, where I was like, drop me off at the DMV on my birthday.
Right.
And so I think some of us, we're really frustrated because it's like, why do you not, move like quickly, don't walk, run. So I would say just patience. And then, I try to also meet the generations where they are. So for example, with my nephews specifically and some of the other younger people that I work with, I mean, I always try to send, podcasts to them to listen to, or, short snippets of info, audio books that I think that will be good. Just things that, quotes, just things that are going to keep them motivated. Things that motivated us, or the way that maybe we were motivated, which were, a lot of us were motivated financially, to be honest with you.
Right.
That's what got us going. We know younger generations are not as motivated by, by money. They want things that have a purpose. That's what drives them. And so I think, really understanding that and trying to match that to where, they are. There has to be some meeting in the middle, of course, but that's one of the things that I try to do is, kind of find whatever those little snippets of things that I think will resonate with younger folks. I try to share those as opposed to, because, my way of coaching is really about more of a big sister. It's funny when you look up a lot of millennial coaches, they're, kind of in their 50s, 60s, and I think I don't think their message kind of resonates as much with younger people, right, because it feels like, you're talking down to them, you're just preaching to them. And so I'm 40, so I am what's known as a Xennial, which is sort of the micro generation between millennials. And I did not make it up. This is a real term.
I'm trying to tell you, you made that up, man.
I did not make it up.
You made it up.
I did not make it up. So, so because of that, like I get it. Like I get some of the things that drive millennials. I'm a technology person. I like my phone with me at all times, like, right, it's a, pacemaker, but at the same time, I still can relate to the older generations and, sort of, I'm on both sides. So I think, right, that's kind of what sets me apart a little bit from some of the other folks that work in this space. And, I've learned a lot on my journey. I mean, I've been in the workforce now for 20 years myself, and have kind of been very fortunate to have some really good opportunities. And so I try to really share where I have, had some missteps or things I've learned, and be very honest and transparent about it.
Right.
And so I think that's the other part too, I would say, is just, being honest and transparent, as is really key, especially with the younger generations. They want to really know, what were your pitfalls, what were your right, the things that, went right or went wrong, because they're growing up in a generation, especially with social media, where everything is sort of painted as, this like perfect picture. Mm-hmm. And we know it's not. I mean, yeah, it's not. Like, and I frankly, I get a bit frustrated with that sometimes. Is, I think how we define working hard and putting in the work definitely varies. And so sometimes I think, I know for me personally, people have seen some of the things that I've done and like, oh, wow, she's, successful, and it's been, she's lucky, or it's all been handed to her, but it has not. I've put in a lot of hard work. I mean, I worked 19 hours yesterday.
Yeah, because you wasn't responding back to me. I don't like that too much.
So I'm still putting in the work. I'm still putting in the work when I have to. But so I think that, but that's not for everybody. So I think, right, that's the other thing. That's the one thing I would say. You have to also realize everything is not for everybody. So, parents, the dream you had may not be the dream of your child. And so sometimes you have to and we know the younger generations are taking a little bit longer to grow up.
So basically, parents, don't be a Joe Jackson. That's the summary.
Or be a Joe Jackson. I don't know.
You don't want to be a Joe Jackson now. Well, hey, Arika, I want to thank you first and foremost again. Thank you for taking time out this evening to have a conversation with me. Dope Chats with Stretch. It's been very rewarding. I know informational, educational as well. And it's the fact that you know what you're talking about. You got the blueprint available for all these folks out there to take advantage of and go forth with success in their careers. With that being said, please plug away.
All right. Well, the book, The Millennials Playbook to Adulting, is available on Amazon. And actually, the digital book is available right now for 99 cents. So during the quarantine, I wanted to give it away for free, but Jeff Bezos says you can't give it away for free. You have to at least charge 99 cents. So, so the ebook is 99 cents, or the regular book, I think it's think it's $12.99 or $14.99. I don't remember actually, but it's on Amazon. You can also check me out on my website, which is Arika Pierce, Arika, Pierce.com. Follow me on Instagram, The Millennial Boardroom. And also, I have a podcast called The Millennial Boardroom. I've actually been on a 7-week hiatus, but I put out a new episode today, so I'm back. So please check out the podcast, and just check me out. I mean, and LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I should have said that.
First of all, I just want to say shout out to your dad.
Oh. Is he? You know, he got Instagram. I forgot to tell him.
He is plugging away for you right now.
Is he on here?
I think so.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He is. He put the website up for you. So,
are you serious?
Yeah. Shout out to Mr. Pierce. That's our guy right there.
That's weird. So I can't see who's on here. I've never really done I don't know how the.
Yeah, you can't see. I can see it. I can see it. So,
okay.
Yeah,
that is hilarious, my dad. Okay, thank you. Well, you know what? And I appreciate my parents. So let me shout out my parents, my number one and supporters, my parents and my sister. So
word up. I love the Pierces. The Pierces.
Okay, that's funny. I didn't even tell him that this was going to be on, so my dad must be hanging out on Instagram.
That's hilarious. But thanks again. This has been wonderful, and I look forward to connecting with you soon outside of the quarantine. And thank you for all your help that you've given me over the years as well. So for all those folks out there, please show her some support. Pick up the book, take a class, listen to her podcast. And, of course, share this information with any millennials and Gen Zers that you have in your life because it is well worth it for them to excel based off of the great information that Arika has to share. All right?
Yeah, and actually, I'm working on my second book, so look out for that. Hopefully, late fall, by August, September is my target. So.
Word. Can you give us a little sneak of what it's going to be about?
Yeah, so some of you may be familiar with the book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it's actually going to be a version of that, but really focused on millennials. So it'll be the habits of highly successful millennials. And so it'll be a combination of me talking about what those habits are, but also I'm interviewing about 100 millennial leaders from all different aspects, industry, entertainment, legal, technology, healthcare, so on. And I want to know what are their habits. So like when they wake up in the morning, what do they do? How do they manage their schedule? Do they respond to email all day, or do they close out their email? How do they run meetings? How do they network? How do they get, to that position? So It's going to have those real life stories in terms of, what they do, what they did in terms of how to become successful, combined with just some of the my own, recommendations on. It's 10 areas actually. It's not 7 for me. So.
Word. Well, that's dope. Looking forward to that. That is gonna be dope. So
yes. So later.
Look out for that. For real. All right. Well, thank you again, Arika. Much love to you. Tell Misha I said what's up.
Well.
Right.
Thanks for fitting me into the schedule.
Anytime. Always a friend of the show. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another dope episode of Dope Chats for Stretch. Until then, peace.
Thanks, Stretch. Appreciate it. Have fun. This was fun.
No doubt.